Millionaire discovers shocking secret on first night with 22-year-old immigrant. Jake Thompson's penthouse was a fortress of glass and steel, rising high above the city lights that blurred into streaks of neon under the relentless rain. The storm beat against the windows like a warning, sharp and cold. His empire was built on code and invention. But tonight, surrounded by sleek silence, Jake felt the weight of emptiness pressing down on his chest. He sipped the wine, dark and full-bodied, as the city breathed below him. Thundering cars, distant sirens, a world that never really slept. And then she walked in. Sofia, 22, fiery eyes, and a smile that flickered like firelight through the shadows of his lonely life. She carried with her the scents of Brazil. Earthy, sweet, a promise of summer, even as autumn rotted the trees outside. Sofia laughed lightly, tossing a lock of glossy black hair over her shoulder as she poured more wine. The sound broke something inside Jake. A sad, the city's heartbeat thudded through the floor. But then Jake's phone lit up with a chilling message. Trust no one, not even those closest. The words glowed on the screen like a blade. His throat tightened, pulse pounding in his ears. Betrayal wasn't just a whisper anymore. It was screaming. Before he could ask, Sofia leaned closer. Her breath was warm, but her eyes were icy. "There's something I've never told anyone," she whispered, voice trembling like glass about to shatter. The room seemed to shrink around them. Light dimmed, shadows grew. Jake's world spun. What could she know? How deep did this secret plunge? His hand trembled on the glass. The lump in his throat was sudden and fierce. Right then, the sharp chime of the doorbell sliced through the tension. It echoed down the empty hall and seemed to shake the walls of Jake's life. The rain tapped an urgent rhythm on the windows. The city's pulse held its breath. A stranger was waiting, and whatever waited beyond that door could unravel everything Jake thought he understood about trust, love, and power. Who could it be? Friend or foe? Ally or enemy? The night stretched wide and dark. Answers hovered just out of reach, tangled with danger and desire. Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube canceled their subscriptions without warning. Just check out the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content coming up. And while you're there, leave that powerful like. It helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and let me know in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love meeting all the amazing people who are part of this community. Your participation makes a difference. Let's interact. The doorbell rang again, a sharp sound that cut through the tension in the room. Sofia's eyes widened, panic flickering across her features like lightning through dark clouds. Jake's heart raced. He could feel the weight of the moment, heavy and oppressive. What was behind that door? He glanced at Sofia, searching for reassurance, but found only uncertainty reflected back at him. "Should I get it?" he asked, his voice steady but soft, trying to anchor them both in the storm of emotions swirling around. Sofia hesitated, biting her lip, the gleam of her playful confidence dimming. Maybe we should just ignore it," she replied. But her eyes darted to the door, drawn to the unknown that waited just beyond. Before he could respond, she stepped forward, as if compelled. A part of him wanted to stop her, to pull her back into the fragile safety of their moment. But the other part, the part buzzing with a mix of curiosity and fear, urged him to let her go. Sofia reached for the door. Jake held his breath, every muscle coiled tight. The doorknob twisted, and the door swung open. A woman stood there, drenched from the rain, her hair plastered to her forehead, and her eyes were wild, searching. "Jake," she gasped, as if she had sprinted from a nightmare. "You have to listen to me. It's about Sofia." Jake's stomach dropped. Who was this woman? And what did she mean about Sofia? Deep dread unfurled in his chest. The world outside was now muted, the city oblivious to the trembling atmosphere inside his penthouse. Sofia turned slowly, confusion written all over her face. "What are you talking about?" she demanded, her tone sharp but afraid. The newcomer stepped inside, shaking off the rain like a stray dog, but her presence was anything but welcome. "Sofia isn't who you think she is," she said, her voice low yet urgent. "I'm her sister," the woman replied, locking eyes with Jake, and he could feel her desperation. "I came to find her before it was too late." His gaze snapped back to Sofia. "You have a sister?" The words flew out, sharp and unsettling. Sofia's expression hardened. "No, that's not true. I don't have a sister." But Jake could see the fear in her eyes, a crack in the cheerful facade. "Yes, you do," the woman shouted, stepping forward. "You can't run from—" "That's enough," Jake shouted, feeling the walls close in around him. Trust shattered like glass. "What's going on? Sofia, is this true?" Sofia's face paled, her lips parted in a silent plea as tears began to spill down her cheeks. "Please, let me explain," she begged. "You don't understand." But before she could finish, thunder roared outside, drowning her words. The lights flickered, casting shadows that danced wildly. The woman pushed further, unleashing a new wave of chaos. "There's more. You have to know about the others, the ones who are looking for you. They won't stop until they find you." Jake's mind raced. The warmth of their earlier intimacy turned to ice. He felt unsteady, struggling to process this devastating revelation. Was everything they shared just a facade? Then, like a punch to the gut, another sound pierced the air, a single gunshot echoing through the storm. It came from the direction of the door. Jake's world tilted. Everything he thought he knew shattered into pieces, scattering like rain across the pavement. Who was in danger? Sofia, him, or both? And as the city held its breath, he realized this night had only just begun to unveil its true horrors. The room erupted into chaos. Jake's heart raced like a runaway train, pounding in his chest. The echo of the gunshot twisted around them, wrapping tight, squeezing the air from his lungs. Shadows danced wildly in the dim light, and he turned back to Sofia, panic in his eyes. "Are you okay?" He managed to ask, but the words felt empty. The weight of that question hung between them like a guillotine poised to drop. Sofia's hands trembled, and she was backing away into the corner, the color draining from her face. I don't know," she stammered, terror sharpening her features. "I didn't think they'd find me here. What's happening? Who is after you?" Jake's voice was barely a whisper, lost in the tempest of emotions swirling inside him. The woman, the supposed sister, took a step forward, her own fear mingling with urgency. "I'm trying to help you, Jake. I need you to trust me." But trust felt like a joke now, a cruel trick. Sofia's facade cracked, revealing the raw edges of fear and desperation. "He can't trust you. You left. You never wanted me. You abandoned us both." There was a ferocity in her voice that Jake had never heard before. Jake blinked, confusion swirling in his mind. "Sofia, wait, what do you mean she abandoned you?" The revelation felt like splinters digging into his skin, unearthing every tender moment they'd shared. "I didn't leave," the woman shouted. I was forced to protect you. You don't understand. Sofia was taken and she escaped. But they're still out there. A beat of silence followed. Thunder rolled ominously in the distance, but the air inside grew thick with suspense. Then, without warning, another figure appeared at the door. A man, drenched but menacing. He held a weapon, and his eyes flickered with cold intent. "Sofia," he called out, voice slicing through the tension like a knife. "We've found you." "No," Jake shouted, instinctively stepping in front of Sofia. "Get away from her." His chest tightened as adrenaline surged, blurring his vision. "Jake, don't!" Sofia reached out, gripping his arm with surprising strength. "He's one of them. They're here for me." "Tell them to back off," the woman yelled, her voice rising above the chaos. "Your time is up, Sofia," the man said, advancing slowly, calculating. "You can't run from your past. It's come to collect you." Jake felt the ground shift beneath him. The woman's frantic energy merged with Sofia's fear, forming a volatile cocktail of dread. "What do you mean? Why are you—" And just like that, the world exploded. A blinding flash enveloped the room, and Jake staggered back as the blast erupted, shrapnel flying, glass shattering everywhere. The man slammed against the wall, and for a moment, all Jake could see was chaos. The piercing sound of metal ripping through flesh echoed eerily, followed by a gasp. Jake's breath caught. He looked around, horrified. The woman lay sprawled on the floor, the light in her eyes fading fast. Blood pooled beneath her, soaking into the carpet, as her sister shrieked in pure agony. "Sofia!" Jake shouted, kneeling next to the woman, his hands trembling as he pressed against the wound. He looked back at Sofia, who was frozen in place, eyes wide, lost. "Now do you understand?" the man hissed, voice dripping with venom. "She was the key, and you just blew it all apart." Jake's mind reeled, confusion and shock mingling with the urgency of the moment. "What key? What are you talking about?" The chaos and fear whipped around them like a violent storm, leaving no room for reason. With the woman gasping for breath, eyes glazed, Jake felt the ice of realization seep into his bones. Everything had shifted in the span of seconds. The woman wasn't just an intruder. She was connected to this tangled mess. And then the truth hit him like a punch. Sofia wasn't simply a victim. She was part of something that had been concealed under flirtation, warmth, and deception. Jake stared at Sofia, betrayal twisting his gut. "Who are you really, Sofia?" But her expression was blank, shaking like a leaf in the wind. As the sirens wailed in the distance, approaching like a predator, he realized this night had just begun twisting into a nightmare, unraveling everything he thought he knew. "What have you dragged me into?" he whispered, terrified of the answer that hung in the air like poison. Jake felt the terror wash over him like icy water. The woman on the floor was Stent. Sofia shook in the corner, frozen and terrified. Jake turned back to the man, whose gun was still pointed straight at him, unwavering. "Tell me what you want!" Jake shouted, clutching the hand of the dying woman. The blood smeared against his palm, crimson and warm. "Your girlfriend, Jake." The man spoke with a chilling calmness. "She holds the key to a massive fortune, one worth more than any of us can even fathom." "Fortune?" Jake echoed, confusion twisting in his gut. "What are you talking about?" At that moment, Sofia's panicked voice broke through the chaos. "Jake, you don't understand." She stepped forward, but Jake instinctively stepped back, not sure whom to trust. "They want to use me." "Use you for what?" Jake demanded. "What do they want?" Just tell him, Sofia, the woman gasped, clutching her wound. They know about your past, how you escaped. If they find out what you really are. But before she could finish, Jake felt an electric charge flit through the room. He turned to see a flash of light from Sofia's eyes. A flicker so bright it nearly blinded him. "Stop!" the man shouted, eyes wide, realization dawning. He took an unnerved step back, lowering his weapon slightly. "What are you?" And in that instant, everything changed. The air thickened, buzzing with energy, as if the very walls were reacting. Sofia's frame shimmered, almost ghost-like, her form twisting and rippling like a reflection in water. Suddenly, she stood taller, stronger, her fiery eyes now ablaze with an unseen power. "Jake," her voice deepened, resonating with authority. "I am not who you think I am." "What are you doing?" Jake stammered, shock pinching his heart. "Sofia, please don't." "Nobody wants to believe me until it's too late," she barked, fury threading through her tone. The very air around her crackled, as if charged by a storm. "This man and his brotherhood, they believe I'm their last chance to reclaim their empire, to harness what we've built." "Empire?" Jake parroted, feeling the bottom drop out from under him. "What empire?" The man's face twisted in horror, shock draining the color from his skin. "You're lying! You can't be one of them!" Sofia took a step toward him, eyes wild. "I'm the last key, courtesy of a world that doesn't exist anymore. They think they can control me, but they have no idea. I'm here to break the mold." The woman gasped. "You can't! If you do this, you'll destroy everything we've worked for. Everything you have is built on lies," Sofia shouted, raising her hands, channeling her power. The dim light in the room flickered, shadows swirling, drawing away from her. And then, like a thunderclap, she unleashed it. A shockwave blasted out from her, an unimaginable force that shattered the glass windows and sent the furniture flying. Jake was thrown to the ground, a ragged breath escaping his lips as he struggled to comprehend what he'd just witnessed. The man regained his footing, scrambling to regain control. But it was too late. The air was electric, alive, pulsing like a living thing. "Jake, you need to decide." Sofia's voice reached him over the din. She looked torn, intensity swirling in her eyes. "Will you stand with me, or let them take your life, your world, everything you love?" Jake's heart raced, conflicting emotions crashing over him like waves. Betrayal twisted alongside a fierce attraction to her. But one thing was clear. The woman on the floor was not the only casualty that night. Relationships were fracturing, secrets exploding, a storm of consequence brewing. Then a roar of sirens crescendoed outside. Lights flashed through the cracks in the doorframe, a chorus of chaos enveloping them. Jake realized they were running out of time. "Tell me the truth," he yelled. "Are you here to save me or destroy me?" In that moment, the room exploded into darkness. It wasn't just the lights outside flickering. It felt like reality was ripping open. Unraveled threads, tangled and twisted around their fates. The answers thrust into chaos, leaving Jake gasping in a world transformed. As the last remnants of her energy flickered into silence, Jake was left with one haunting question. Had he been lured into a trap, or had he been given the chance to rewrite the boundaries of his own life? Jake felt the energy ripple through the air, confusion and fear twisting into a storm inside him. The chaos of the moment flooded his senses. The dying woman's breaths came in rasps, and Sofia stood defiant, transformed. Everything he thought he knew evaporated like smoke. "Jake!" Sofia called, her voice steady in that electrified atmosphere. "This is bigger than us. It always has been." But before Jake could respond, the man with the gun lunged forward. "You don't understand," he shouted, panic creeping into his voice. "You have no idea what you're unleashing." Sofia's eyes narrowed, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in her expression. "You made this choice, not me," she shot back, her power still crackling at her fingertips. In that moment, a piercing siren echoed closer, abruptly shattering the tense standoff. A deafening crash resounded from behind, and the last glass window shattered, sending shards spinning through the air like deadly confetti. Jake instinctively ducked, adrenaline surging through his veins. He glimpsed Sofia channeling her power, her hair whipping around her. But there was no time to process it. The man was twisting, raising his gun again, desperate. And then a figure burst through the back door. The police, swirling in like a storm, their shouts slicing through the haze of chaos. "Freeze! Hands in the air!" The man swiveled in shock, the moment stretching painfully thin. And before he could react, a shot rang out. Not his gun, but a police officer's. A brutal sea. Jake's heart stopped. The bright red pool of blood stained the carpet, mingling with the chaos. Fear turned into disbelief as everything shifted again. Sofia looked at the fallen man, wide-eyed. Then the officer charged toward Sofia, gun aimed directly at her. "Get away from her!" Jake shouted, stepping between them, arms raised in defense. But the officer's eyes were not on Jake. They were fixed on Sofia. "Sofia Moreno, put your hands where I can see them. You're under arrest." The name hit Jake like a sledgehammer. "Moreno," he gasped, mind racing. "Your last name! You're not just anyone, are you?" Sofia's face twisted in shock. "I can explain," she pleaded, hands shaking, but fear crept into her gaze. "No," the officer barked, not lowering his weapon. "You've been implicated in several serious crimes, and you're coming with us." Jake's head spun. Suddenly, Sofia was not just his fiery companion. She was a suspect, entangled in something more sinister than he'd imagined. "What have you done?" Jake shouted, emotions surging. "Is this true? What are they accusing you of?" Sofia recoiled, hurt flashing across her face, but behind that lay turmoil and indecision. They both sensed something deeper, a truth that connected her to the chaos beyond the walls of his penthouse. "Jake, she faltered, tears gathering. "I was caught up in something I didn't choose." But before she could confess, the sirens outside intensified, drowning her words. The reality of their surroundings clawed at him. This was spiraling out of control. "Tell me," he demanded, voice breaking, "who are you really?" A sudden silence fell. The world held its breath. Everyone paused, sensing the tension crackling in the air. From behind the officer, a soft voice broke through, cutting the noise. "Actually, they have it wrong." All heads turned. The wounded woman, no longer struggling, slowly raised her upper body from the floor, a shocking glare cutting through the confusion. "You thought your secrets were safe, didn't you, Sofia? You were never meant to be here." Sofia's face twisted in disbelief. The woman's eyes sparked with truth, revealing a long-neglected connection. "You're not just a key. You're the lock. And this is just the beginning." Jake felt the ground shift again beneath him. "What does that mean?" he gasped, the implications pressing against him like a weight. "There's so much more at stake than you know," the woman continued, voice steady, like the calm before a storm. "You thought it was over once she escaped, but they want more than just the key. They want absolute power, and Sofia's tied to it. Jake's world tilted again, uncertainty layering on top of already shattering revelations. As chaos reigned around him and the officer struggled to comprehend, Jake realized the truth pulsed through the shadows. The past was rising, secrets bubbling to the surface, and in the storm of desperation, he wondered whether any flicker of hope remained. And deep down, the question loomed. Had he been caught in an elaborate trap, or was he simply entangled in the fate of someone he never truly knew? Jake remained frozen, shock washing over him like a frigid wave. The woman's frail form on the ground drew his attention. Sofia's eyes glimmered, a storm brewing behind them. "Jake, But before she could explain, the wounded woman coughed violently, pulling everyone's focus back to her. "This isn't your fight!" she gasped, each word a struggle. "You were never meant to get caught up in this. It's bigger than you know." Jake found himself torn, feeling a dangerous mix of loyalty to Sofia and dread over the chilling revelation. The officer still pointed his gun, shouting commands. "Sofia, you're wanted for numerous charges. Stop this madness or I will shoot." "But I didn't," Sofia protested, holding her hands up as if to calm the storm. The air was thick with tension, and just then, the sirens practically screamed through the windows, drowning out reason. Everything felt like it was spiraling, ready to burst. Suddenly, in the swirling chaos, a loud crack shattered the night. The front door flew open again, this time bursting in like a whirlwind. A bulky figure stumbled in, firelight illuminating their face. For a moment, Jake was too stunned to react. "Dad?" he breathed, disbelief choking his words. His father's eyes had always held a certain strength, but now they were wide, wild. "Jake, get back! They're coming!" The officer spun, barely recognizing the newcomer. "Who the hell are you?" "Doesn't matter," the man growled, eyes locked on Sofia. "She's the one we're here for." "What?" Jake shouted, looking back at Sofia, confusion flooding his senses. "You're after her?" "No!" Sofia shouted, shaking her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You don't understand." The room thickened with tension. Breaths hung suspended in the air as truth collided with expectation. And then it all crumbled. Before Jake could grasp the weight of his father's words, another echoing gunshot fired, louder, deeper. This time, it ricocheted inside his head, sharp and cold. The officer fell to his knees, shock spreading like wildfire across his features, gun slipping from his hands. "No!" Sofia screamed. "What just happened?" Jake turned in disbelief, horror clawing at his insides. His father stood, a smoke curling from the muzzle of a gun now resting at his side. "I had to protect you, son. You don't understand what she is." "What she is?" Jake's voice cracked, disbelief fueling the anger thrumming through him. "She's a person, not some thing to protect me from." "No, you don't get it," his father insisted, stepping forward. "Sofia is part of something far more dangerous. They're coming to collect her, and they'll kill anyone in their path." "Stop!" Sofia begged, stepping in front of Jake, fury mingling with despair. "I'm not part of anything. I escaped from them. Your past will catch up with you." His father shot back, the panic in his tone edged with desperation. "If they don't finish it, someone else will." Jake felt the ground shift under him, the world collapsing into a blur of violence, confusion, and fear. As his father's eyes darkened, Jake realized that nothing was as it seemed. Betrayal twisted around them like fog, shrouding intentions and feelings in an opaque haze. Then, as if the universe decided they'd had enough, a sharp sound echoed from outside, the unmistakable pop of tires being shot out, the screeches of a car skidding to a halt. Panic surged back into the room like water bursting through a dam. "Get down! They're here!" his father shouted, urgency lacing his voice. The door ripped open again, and through the shadows, dark figures slipped in, too many to count, moving in like shadows under the cover of night. Jake's heart raced, realizing everything had just spiraled into absolute chaos. And in that moment, beneath the weight of fear and betrayal, it became crystal clear. They were knee-deep in something they had only begun to understand. Everything hung in the balance, lives teetering at the edge of a precipice. As Jake looked at Sofia, the flicker of a new reality ignited inside him. This was a battle for their lives and truths that no one understood. Who could they really trust anymore? What were they all really fighting for? The answers lay tangled in the darkness. The figures poured in, shadows spilling across the dimly lit room. Chaos erupted again as Jake gripped his father's arm, panic tightening his chest. "What do you mean they're coming for her?" he yelled over the rising noise. Sirens screamed outside, drowning their urgency. Sofia stood firm, shock radiating from her as she faced the gunman, the very embodiment of dread. "I'm not who you think," she shouted, voice strong, despite the fear etched across her face. "You can't take me back." "Enough," Jake's father bellowed, his gaze darting between them like a desperate pendulum. Softly, he added, "You'll never be safe if she's here, Jake. You've got to trust me." Before the words could settle like dust, a deafening crash resonated from behind. Panicked breaths filled the space as the air thickened with dread. Shadows darted closer. A chill crept up Jake's spine. "What is happening?" he gasped, voice quaking. That's when everything fell apart. Through the fractured doorway, another man burst in, drenched and desperate. But something flickered in his eyes. Something Jake couldn't pin down. "You've got to listen!" the newcomer shouted, raising hands trembling with raw urgency. "I know what they want." "Who are you?" Jake demanded, but the man ignored him, eyes darting to Sofia with fierce intent. "They're not here for her. They're here for you, Jake. You're the key." The room fell mute. Sofia shifted, vulnerability breaking through her fierce exterior. "What? How can I be tied to this?" Jake felt the ground shift beneath him, a pit opening in his stomach. "What are you talking about?" Before he could scream for clarity, the man lunged forward, and for an instant, time froze. "You have to remember, the past isn't out of reach. Your family, they were part of it." Panic coursed through Jake. Pictures flooded his mind, fragments of laughter, warmth. Family dinners shattered against the stark reality of his present. "No, they weren't!" he cried out, disbelief coursing through him. "Think, Jake," the man pressed, desperation squeezing his words. "It's all connected. The money, the power, your blood runs deep with it." Sofia shook her head, hands trembling. "This can't be true. You're lying." Just then, amid the chaos, a deafening explosion rocked the building. But blast knocked them all to the ground, debris raining like confetti of pain and fear. Jake gasped for air, confusion wrapping around his heart like a vice. Amidst the chaos, as the dust settled, the man's form flickered. One moment he was there, the next, gone, vanished into thin air, leaving behind only a whisper of warning. "Remember," Sofia blinked, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Jake, what's happening? You know him?" Jake shook his head, but a lump formed in his throat. He could barely breathe around the emotions threatening to consume him. "I don't know." But just below the surface, knowledge sparked, flickering like a candle's last breath. Memories long buried began clawing their way back into existence. Hidden truths teetered on the edge of revelation, threatening to unleash a storm. Then Jake's father turned, gaze sharp as an edge. "They'll come for you now, Jake, no matter how far you run." "Why didn't you tell me?" Jake spat, anger churning alongside disbelief. "What else are you hiding?" "It's for your safety. They'll stop at nothing," his father barked back. But something in his eyes faltered, a shadow of guilt conflicting with protectiveness. Outside, more footsteps thundered toward them, sirens blaring louder. The storm had finally descended upon them like an avalanche of fate. Jake turned to Sofia, eyes wide with the suffocating weight of the moment. "I don't know who to believe anymore. I need to know the truth." But before she could respond, another figure emerged from the shadows. This time, a woman. Struggling to catch her breath, she approached with urgency. "Jake, you have to listen. Everything is about to change." His heart raced. The ground felt shaky, as though reality itself was dangling above a dark abyss. And then, everything went black. The darkness wasn't just an absence of light. It felt alive, pulsing around them, swallowing the chaos of sobs and confusion. In that moment, the world spun out of control, leaving Jake dangling on the edge of his past, present, and a future he couldn't yet grasp. What lay ahead? Was it a trap, a rescue, or something even more sinister? He didn't know. But he could feel the storm closing in, and all he had left was a single question. How far would he go to protect those he loved, when the very people he trusted were now shrouded in lies? The darkness pulsed around them, a living entity that thrummed with tension. Jake felt his heart racing, pulse pounding in his ears as he tried to comprehend the chaos unfolding. The woman, wounded and gasping, was still drawing shallow breaths. His father, standing guard beside him, was a storm of fear and anger. Then, without warning, something shifted in the atmosphere. An overwhelming sense of dread filled the room, thick and smothering. It was as if a cold wind swept through, extinguishing any flicker of hope. Visual chaos flared as a figure stepped through the doorway, silhouetted by flashing lights outside. "Get down," someone shouted, but it wasn't clear who. Instinct kicked in. Jake pushed Sofia behind him, his body a shield. The officers outside rumbled with urgency, voices melding into an incoherent ding. The pounding heartbeats in the room synced with the rhythmic battering on the door, a frantic promise of chaos. In that moment, Sofia's eyes locked onto Jake's, fear distorting her features. "They'll come for you too, Jake," she cried, desperation clawing at her throat. The realization hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. "We can't stay here." Then the air changed. Electric vibrations coursed through the room. Jake turned instinctively, his gaze darting to the window. But what happened next shot through him like a blade. A flash, a flicker, a loud crash. The filthy glass splintered, shards flying like lethal raindrops. In that split second, the world transformed. Time stretched into an eternity of horror. "Jake, look out!" Sofia screamed. He turned, just in time to see a massive figure stumble through the doorway. A man cloaked in darkness, bulging muscles straining against the fabric of his black jacket. A flash of metal glinted in his hand, glistening ominously under the buzz of the emergency lights. "No!" Jake shouted, but the man lunged forward, moving with a terrifying precision. Gunfire erupted, a sharp crack that rattled the very bones of the room. Jake's stomach dropped. He could only watch in horror as the bullets found their mark. Against all odds, as the chaos unraveled, Sofia's demeanor shifted again, her eyes blazing, brilliance shimmering around her like a flame igniting in the dark. In a heartbeat, she reached out, and the bullet's trajectory warped in mid-air. Jake gasped as if he'd been punched. Time seemed to fold in on itself, almost as if someone had hit pause in the midst of horror, bullets dancing in slow motion, deflecting away from their intended targets. The wounded woman on the floor gasped, her eyes widening. "Sofia, no, you can't!" But the power surged through Sofia like wildfire, transforming the room into something otherworldly. Flames flickered to life around her, illuminating the shadows that crept closer, birth-giving fear and anger. Yet in the chaos, someone else screamed, "No, not her! She's the one we need!" Amid the mayhem, a voice pierced through, that of Jake's father. "Sofia, you're connected to this. Stop!" Time unfurled brutally, and Jake felt a jolt of confusion. "What are you saying?" he demanded, his mind a whirlwind. "How do you know?" Suddenly, the air crackled, almost charged with a terrifying intimacy. Adrenaline surged through Jake, searching for answers. But it all came together in one horrific realization. And just as the truth clawed its way into focus, the woman on the floor, her blood pooling, a tendril of silence struck against the cacophony. Her lips parted. "You don't know the truth, any of you. Jake, you're related. You're not just a pawn." A bomb dropped in the room, and everything froze. "What?" Jake barely managed to utter, heart thundering in his chest. "Jake, listen," the woman rasped, voice laced with urgency. "You and Sofia are connected by blood. Your siblings. The key is in your very veins." Shock struck like a lightning bolt, illuminating the darkness. Jake staggered back, stunned, breath caught in his throat. Everything he thought he knew was collapsing in on him, awash in a storm of emotions. He turned her way and saw an entirely different world, cloaked in secrets, held in the grip of shadows. The room swirled, feelings tumbling like fallen leaves in a gust. Sofia looked at him with bewilderment, confusion shattering the fire in her eyes. A boundary forged from trust suddenly ripped apart. Jake stumbled away, mind racing with implications. "No, it can't be true," he mumbled. But the truth tightened around him like a noose. He could hear the breaths caught in the room, feel the weight of eyes glancing between him and Sofia. As the sirens wailed and chaos threatened to choke them all, Jake was left standing at the edge of an abyss, hanging on the precipice of a reality he never knew. What had this night transformed into? And would he ever be able to bridge the chasms this shocking revelation had opened? As uncertainty loomed, the only constant was a question. What future did they all share in this tangled web of blood and secrecy? Jake stood in the dim light, fighting to catch his breath as the revelation hit him. His entire world shifted, and the air hummed thick with uncertainty. They were connected, siblings. The very thought rattled him. Unraveling every thread of trust he'd woven over the past few days. What had once felt like a budding romance with Sofia now felt like a tangled web of deception. "Jake, please." Sofia's eyes gleamed with a mixture of desperation and fear. "I need you to trust me." But Jake couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal prickling at his skin. He glanced at the wounded woman gasping for breath, and then back at his father, who stood ready, fear etched across his features. "How can I trust anyone?" His voice rose, thick with emotion. "What else are you hiding?" The moment hung in the air like a rain cloud ready to burst, tension palpable. Then, without warning, a loud bang echoed, a sound like thunder splitting the night. Jake's heart dropped as he spun toward the doorway. The shadows shifted and morphed into a massive figure, towering and cloaked in black. "Give it to me!" the figure roared, shoving past the remnants of the door, which splintered like kindling. Adrenaline shot through Jake's veins. Fear exploded in his chest. He pushed Sofia back, instinctively stepping into the line of danger. "Stay back!" he shouted, fists clenched, bracing for what would come next. But as the man approached, something strange crawled inside Jake's mind, a twinge of familiarity. He couldn't quite place it. The sensation gnawed at his thoughts like a persistent itch. The woman on the floor gasped, her voice fading. "You have to!" And in that split second, the man's hands glinted brightly as he whipped around a dagger, its blade reflecting the chaotic strobe of police lights outside. Suddenly, the world sloped into slow motion. Jake felt time buckle and twist as rage surged. He realized, with a sickening clarity, that everything was about to change. The man lunged forward, adrenaline surging through Jake. He stepped in front of Sofia, instinctively pushing her away. But just before the blade could strike, something exploded in the room. A flash of light consumed everything. Jake felt the heat almost burn him. And then, darkness. When Jake's vision cleared, he was on the floor, gasping, the room eerily calm. He looked around, the air thick with smoke. Where had everyone gone? Had he passed out? Then he felt her voice, soft but strong, wrapping around him like a soft blanket. "Jake, there's so much you don't know." Sofia stood above him, but she looked different, shimmering, as if a powerful light glowed just beneath her skin. "Don't you see?" she continued, urgency threading her tone. "You were meant to lead, to reclaim what's yours. They'll stop at nothing." "What are you talking about?" Panic twisted through him. "What's happening?" Without a word, she held out her hand. "Trust me." And as he glanced around the room, shadows began to flicker back into existence. The officers were there, but they weren't moving as they did before. They stood frozen, eyes wide open, as if caught in a moment of time. The woman on the floor was gone. "What is this?" he stammered, dread curling in his gut. Then came the haunting laughter from the man, the one with the dagger. "You think it's over?" he jeered, his voice echoing through the haze. "This is only the beginning, boy." Jake's blood ran cold as his heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. Suddenly, everything he thought to be real twisted. "No!" he yelled, tearing his gaze from Sofia to the man. "What do you mean? What have you done?" But instead of backing off, the man lunged again, and this time Sofia stepped forward, enveloping them both in her strange, glowing power. Time slowed once more, but a new realization struck Jake, filled with heartbreak and confusion. Could he trust her? Could he really lean into this? Just as the dagger came within inches of his skin, an explosion sounded, nearly deafening, a blinding light consuming everything. And in that instant, the truth unraveled before him. Sofia wasn't just any woman. She wasn't even who she claimed to be. She was the orchestrator of everything, the master puppeteer in this twisted play. "No!" Jake gasped, the weight of betrayal crashing down like a tidal wave, engulfing him in a crushing darkness. And just like that, the world erupted into chaos anew, leaving Jake suspended between past and future, surrounded by flickering truths and unraveling lies. The question that loomed was no longer what he'd fight for, but who would emerge from the ashes of this blazing heartache, alive or dead. Jake felt the world teeter, like a fragile glass teetering on the edge of a table. Sofia shimmered beside him, a beacon amidst the chaos. But now, she felt like a stranger. The heat of the moment engulfed him, an oppressive weight pushing down, smothering. "You have to trust me." But how could he? Everything about this night twisted and turned him inside out. The man with the dagger still loomed like a dark specter, waiting, watching. Please. Sofia grabbed his arm, her fingers trembling. I can explain. Before he could respond, the cacophony around them escalated. A voice pierced through the haze. You're not the only one with power, Sofia. The man's eyes locked onto Jake, a sneer curling on his lips. And you, boy, have no idea what you're getting into. Then everything changed. The man lunged again, but this time, to Jake's shock, Sofia stepped forward, her energy radiating like a sun. The room morphed. Shadows whipped around them, and the air thickened, swirling with unseen forces. But then, the impossible happened. The world exploded in a blinding white light. Jake blinked, disoriented. He tried to shield his eyes, but visibility vanished in an instant. Sounds blurred into a dull roar, fragments of reality scattering like the remnants of shattered glass. Jake, he heard Sofia's voice, soft and far away. We have to go! Suddenly, he was pulled into the light, swept away from the chaos. All he could see was white, pure, suffocating white. Heart racing, Jake felt the emptiness close in around him, filling his lungs with panic. Then, just as abruptly as it had begun, it ended. The light faded, and he collapsed onto solid ground, gasping. Where was he? The air felt different, cooler. When he opened his eyes, he was no longer in the penthouse. He stood in a dilapidated warehouse filled with rubble, shadows playing against the cold concrete walls. The hum of fluorescent lights buzzed erratically overhead. Confusion clawed at him as he spun around. Memories of the last moments in the penthouse lingering like smoke. Where was Sofia? Jake? A familiar voice echoed through the cavernous space. It was a voice that made his heart drop. He turned, and there she was, his mother. But she looked different, worn and haggard. You have to listen to me, she pleaded, urgency flooding her tone. You're in terrible danger. Mom? Jake blurted out, disbelief rooted in his bones. What are you doing here? I'll explain everything, but right now you're being hunted. Tears glistened in her eyes, and Jake felt the ground beneath him tremble. What do you mean? His pulse quickened. The pieces were all wrong. You can't be here. You left. I never left you, she cried, the rawness of her pain slicing through the air. We had no choice. They took us, your father and me. We had to hide you from them. His world spun again. Them? Who's them? The fear in his voice surged, and suddenly every comforting thought shattered. But before she could answer, the dark figure from before materialized from the shadows behind her, the dagger glinting even under the fluorescent lights. You've come too far, Jake. What are you talking about? Jake shouted, anger bubbling over the confusion. The man stepped forward, eyes gleaming with malice. It's time you learned the truth about your family, who you truly are. And with that, he lunged, but not before Sofia shattered into the scene once more, light emanating from her, raw power poised to collide. But just as the air thickened with tension, dying breaths tremored through the room. Jake, they've known all along. You're not just a boy. You're the heir to a legacy of power. Jake staggered back, the world crashing down around him. No, you're lying! And right then, everything exploded. The room shook, walls crumbling, and Jake was ripped from reality, plunged into a swirling storm of chaos and revelation, uncertain what would be left standing when the dust settled. The question loomed. Who was he really? And how deep would the truth sink? As his vision blurred once again, he could only whisper into the dark, "What now?"